The Parsha Shelach Lecha is famous for the story of the spies and how they came back with the report about the land of Canaan, which led to the people losing confidence, a breakdown in everything that they had hoped for and aspired to, coming into a land of their own, quickly to settle and build a new life. And now they're being forced back for 40 years into the wilderness. It's not just a breakdown of confidence, it's also a breakdown in their trust in the leadership of Moshe. And as a result, their confidence in the Torah, the Constitution. They no longer know where they stand and what they need to do and what they ought to do. The Torah responds to this by immediately saying, let's get on with it. We've got to wait 40 years, but meanwhile, let's follow the Constitution, and here are some of the laws. Towards the end of the Parsha, there's a story about a man who goes out on Shabbat, picking up sticks, breaks Shabbat, and he's brought to Moses. Moses doesn't know what to do with him. Is it because he wasn't given instructions about such a situation on Mount Sinai? Or perhaps it's because he understood that under the circumstances he might have to be lenient. What punishment should he apply? Either way, he goes to God, and God tells him, sorry, you've got to put this guy to death, which seems very harsh to us, particularly in view of the fact that generally, despite the Torah mentioning death as a punishment, it's very difficult to carry it out, and there are lots of hurdles before you can convict anybody. And yet, here, it's clear that although sometimes the Torah says incidents that happened in the Torah or laws don't necessarily happen that way, or the punishment doesn't actually have to be carried out, here it was. So, why? If we go back in time, we realize that the laws of Shabbat were given before the so-called Ten Commandments. When they crossed over the Red Sea, there was no water, then there was no food, they were given the manna. The man was this wafer material that came down during the night. They went out in the morning, they gathered up, and they had enough for one day's supply of food. If they took any extra, more than they needed, by the following day it would rot and be full of worms. And they did this every day of the week, except on Friday they had a double portion, so that would tide them over to Shabbat when they wouldn't go out, there wouldn't be any man, and they had to keep Shabbat. And the way, says Moses, you keep Shabbat is by preparing everything the day before. Bake whatever you have to bake, boil, cook whatever you have to cook. Do it beforehand so that on Shabbat you're free for spiritual or for different activities to those you normally do during the week. So those laws were very, very clear in black and white, and people were expected to adhere to them. But now we have this cataclysm of the spies, the breakdown of authority, and therefore these laws were being challenged. As we're going to see, they're going to be challenged week after week shortly. The problem, therefore, was that this man going out and gathering sticks wasn't just doing something casually because he felt like doing it. He was knowingly doing something in public, in defiance of the law and of the Constitution. And under conditions like that, it's not surprising that it was felt necessary to apply the rules even more harshly than you might do normally. Some people wanted to explain in the Midrash this incident differently and say, no, it wasn't so much a challenge to authority as somebody intentionally doing something to clarify a point of law because people weren't certain. They thought the laws of Shabbat had to do with food, but what about sticks? And therefore, in a sense, somebody almost committed suicide by putting himself in this position in order to help everybody know what the law was. And although the Torah doesn't mention who this person was, later on the rabbi suggests it might have been Tzlafchad, who died leaving 5 daughters. But either way, the point here is that sometimes conditions that are extreme call for an extreme response. And here the whole background to this incident emphasizes why it was considered that Moses had to act strongly and strictly in order to preserve his position and that of the Constitution.